Okay, we're on Science Sealed and Delivered with Jamie, and this is part Jamie Hope, and this is part two with Andy McClure, author of an upcoming book called Just Show Up. And we're talking about grief. We're talking about life situations that arise and how you can show up in people's lives and what you should and probably shouldn't do or say to when you have somebody that's grieving, because that can become a real funny business. So sorry, and sometimes you guys might see it's a little laggy. The audio is fine, but for some reason our internet, probably mine, is a little slow today. So I apologize for that. Hopefully that'll be worked out soon. So thank you for being with me again, Andy McClure. Andy has a history in broadcasting and ministry. You've been a broadcaster for 10 plus years, mostly in news talk radio. You're a national, local, state, national, and international. What would you call yourself? What, broadcaster and for sports, correct?
Public address. So I'm the guy in the stadium, in the arena that, introduces the lineups, reads the commercials, calls the plays as they've come and gone. And we've been blessed to do that. People always ask, is it, how does your voice hold up if you do 2 or 3 games in a row? It's never the voice. It's sitting. It's sitting.
Yeah, I can.
Yes.
I can imagine. And we're going to be talking about that here soon. And we're going to talk about that. I bet you do. So we're talking about the grieving process. You went through up until the funeral, and then you said in the previous episode, we started back with, you said people would show up to even clean your house, which is a really awesome thing for people to do, because when you're constantly having a flood of visitors, the last thing you want to do is fret about, and you're wanting to, and then you're exhausted by the end of the day, and you definitely want to have time to grieve in between. So the last thing you want to do is to be spending time cleaning. So that's a really good way to show up. What are some other ways that people did and should show up for you?
Well, keep in mind, we're talking about grief dealing with life and death, but we can grieve things. We can grieve things like loss of a job. We can grieve situations that is more than just death. We have life situations. We can grieve a divorce.
That's true. That's very true.
So there are things that we just need to be aware of, and that means pay attention to the folks that you're in relationship with. So your immediate family, your coworkers, maybe even your neighbors. You see some activity in your neighborhood that doesn't look normal, like, an ambulance. Let the professionals do what they do, and then come over and check. Hey, is everything okay? And
you know what? That's a really good one. Watching out for your neighbors. That's something people just don't seem to do. And people are so, into their own lives. I mean, my husband, Jody, he was really good at doing that with our neighbors across the street. I mean, he was always over there working on his computer, helping him chop wood, getting on his roof to clean out his chimney. I mean, they ended up being best buddies, but that's only because, my husband's a caretaker. That's what he does. He's always helping somebody. And, he usually puts his stuff last. And what a good world it would be if everybody did that. If everybody took the time to put down their kid stuff, to put down their own little home situations and go out and just help somebody.
I mentioned, and then you came back and mentioned his name, my father-in-law, Dell.
Yes.
Who left us, hard to believe, almost 9 years ago. And he was the neighborhood fix-it guy. So you had a car issue, you had a broken garage door spring, you had a bad rain gutter thing, whatever it was. He was the guy that people always called on. And this was a vice president for a very prominent, nationally, internationally known aerospace. I mean, we're going back to Apollo and Skylab and all of those kinds of things that he was.
The stuff he must have known.
The things he took to his grave. We can
now he's the one that worked in the building with no windows too. Like his wife, your wife's mother, she had to get a 800 number sometimes when he was going on a job. Like she couldn't even know where he was, type of work. Yes. Correct?
It was drive to this or fly to this city and drive to the next. So there was a
Wow.
lot of quiet secretness. And the best part, and then I'll get back to his example, was
Sure.
you would watch a movie with him that was dealing with government or military, and something would happen on the screen, and he would quietly go, "Oh, I guess they declassified that." Like, what? What? What was it that we just saw that was supposed to be seen?
Whoa. And it was probably trippy stuff too, I imagine sometimes like, whoa,
Yes.
okay.
So he was the guy that showed up in the neighborhood.
And he's vice president of this magnificent operation, and yet
Yes.
he still took the time to show up for neighbors.
Yes. And I know it really bothered him as he got older. His eyesight and depth perception issues were fading. And so he couldn't do some of those things. So I would go over and help at the house. But he would show up in the neighborhood to help with those things. And so
Wow.
you mentioned the book. There's a whole lot of things that we can just show up in the lives of people.
Hmm.
Grieving, yes. In need, absolutely. And so how can you show up at your children's school or your grandchildren's school?
Right.
You're
Right.
70 years old, still can drive and function, but maybe you don't go to work every day. So go to the local, and I'll say Walmart, Target, whatever, and buy some flashcards and call Mrs. Smith, the third grade teacher, and say, "Hey, do you have kids that need help with math or with
Hmm.
simple language issues?" And go in maybe Monday and Wednesdays for an hour and work with these kids to help them, because she doesn't have enough time
Yes.
to do that. And so you do that for her on Monday and Wednesdays. Who do you help then on Tuesday, Thursday? You help the other third grade teacher or the fourth grade teacher or the kindergarten
Hmm.
teacher, whatever it is. And I'm getting closer and closer to those senior years that, will I ever retire? No. The announcing stuff, my daughters say, "Dad, you'll do that until you die." But what do I do during the day? And so those
Yes.
are things that I will do. And I encourage those who are in retirement, go help out at the school, go
Yes.
help out at the Little League. Biggie, if you're a church person, how can you help with setup?
Or the elderly community centers too, because even if you take one day a month, if everybody took, can you imagine if everybody took one day a month just to go help out? I mean, there's a lot of elderly people that don't have family and they're sitting in nursing homes with nobody. I mean, there's retirement centers, yes, but some of those people in the nursing homes, they are not mobile. So just to go and sit with them and hang out with them and maybe if they're more, if they're a little bit more with it, play a game with them, just take a couple hours and go do that. I mean, those are all great ways. Now, what are some ways that people should not show up? Because there are always those people, they're either good intentioned or they think they're good intentioned. I know that I have seen personally people show up and, to them, grief should have a time limit and they'll say, it's time to move on. And I don't know what their intention is with saying that, but, unless they've gone through it, I mean, everybody's different. Like my grief wasn't as long as yours because of other factors. Like I had another daughter a year after that one died. And so that was very healing to me. For me, I don't know what it was. I've always been okay talking about it. I don't cry about her. I know I'll see her again someday. Some people never ever get over losing that child, and I would never, I can't relate to that, but at the same time everybody's different. You don't know other people's emotions. Did you guys have any issues with that?
Yeah, there's always experts out in life
Yeah,
that
true.
know what you should do in every situation. And
Hmm.
so we had some well-intentioned people trying to give us comfort, but really making it harder. And I
Yeah.
do address this in the book, and I address this in the workshops that we do. And that is, there's a lot of times you feel so compelled to say something. That's why I tell people don't say anything, because what you're going to say is going to be harder.
Yes.
And I'll give you some of those examples. Um, oh, she's in a better place. Well, that's great. Does that make me feel better? No.
Right. Well, of
Uh,
course she is. I mean, that's stating Captain Obvious.
yes. People will ask the question, well, did they bring this on themselves?
No, you seriously get asked
Yes.
that?
Like, did she take her
Wow.
life? Was it suicidal? Um, uh, we've mentioned the book. One of my publishing reps that I deal with, as we first started talking about all of this, broke down in tears on the phone. And she said, "What you just described is my husband's life." They were on a trip out of the country and he had a stroke at 35.
Oh, wow.
And people that she knows, family that know them, ask this question: well, did he overdose? No, he had a stroke. It was
Okay,
nothing
but
that.
back up, Let's say he did. Just say he did. If they're not offering that information, should you even ask that question? Like, the fact of the matter is they're dead and people you love are suffering. Do you really need to get to the nitty-gritty detail? Unless someone offers that information up or, it's later down the road. I mean, even then, to ask if they're not offering, just show up and say you're sorry and help out. You don't need to know unless they're ready to share.
Exactly. And so for the time that I spent in the hospital as a chaplain, that was a huge issue. Is
Hmm.
you get paged. This was before, okay, I'm showing some age here. We just got
Paging.
paged. We didn't get a cell phone
Right.
call. And you would
Right.
get paged to go to room 415. And you
Hmm.
go to room 415. And if it's just a patient by themselves watching TV, just come in and say hello and then go and
Hmm.
sit and wait for them to tell you why. Because
Hmm.
90% of the time, the why was they just needed to know that somebody would show up and care for them, even if it was
Right.
only for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, we were instructed, and it totally made sense, is to say, okay, Bob, Sue, if there's something you need, you know how to get a hold of me. Get up. If you
Hmm.
could shake their hand or squeeze their hand or something, and then leave.
Hmm.
Don't try to impose anything. Oh, well, why did you call me? What's the problem? What are you going through? How come?
Hmm.
How come? Why? 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 And because I had the intimacy of working with doctors and nurses, I could read their charts. I know why they're there. I don't need to bring it up. They know
Hmm.
why they're there. Just go and just show up
Yes.
and
Yep.
be there with them. And so I've tried to share that over the last 20 something years since all of that education and training, but still,
Now,
you
you
don't.
also you also have the people that, like I said, they want to put a time limit on your grief. So you lost your daughter after having in your life for 28 years, and at some point people think, okay, it's been a year or it's been 9 months, so it's time to move on. Are these experts? Do psychological experts tell you it's time to move on? Is that what they would say? Like legitimate?
No, no. And it because, and this is one factor, and I've thought about this several times to say, everybody grieves in their own way.
Yeah.
Everybody is not the same.
Hmm.
God made a whole lot of flavors out there, and we
Hmm.
have to understand that some of them we like and some of them we don't, but they are still their own self. God
Yeah.
wired you in a certain way to do certain things. And a dear, dear, dear pastor friend of mine, now in his mid 80s, um, had two boys. And still, he and his wife gave birth to two boys, one my age, one a couple of years younger. And the one my age died in a triathlon. And I won't go
Oh.
through all the details, but about 2 months later, they're back in Arizona. He's preparing for Sunday morning,
Hmm.
and well-meaning person on the board of directors comes in to talk about something, and he was getting misty-eyed about something, assuming about his son. And this person looked at him and said, "You're not over this yet?"
Really? And they probably think, oh, well, you're a pastor. You believe in the afterlife, so you should just be fine because you know you're going to see. That's kind of, I bet that's, my guess is that's what they were thinking. And that is just so absolutely ridiculous. That's
Yes.
horrible.
You made the statement, God got another angel. Yes, we get that. Um, Another one that is, God needed her more than you. And you're going, well, that's just a very unloving, caring God to just yank
Yeah.
the child as an infant, in your case, as a
Hmm.
28-year-old young lady, in our case. No, no. You know,
Yeah.
well,
And
I thought, go ahead.
actually, now that you say that too, another thing too, on the flip side of that is then people sometimes will question God, or they will want to come to you because they know you're a faith-filled person, faith-based person, and they'll say, so uh, you believe in a God that would take your daughter like that for no reason? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not, he might, that doesn't happen. That might not have been him. It most likely wasn't. I won't know the answers until I get to heaven. But because of my finite understanding, based on my human experience, I'm not going to sit there and say, well, a God, loving God would never do X, Y, and Z. First of all, it might not have been God that did it. We live in a fallen world. We live in a world where accidents happen. Things can happen. Suffering is part of the human experience. There's a multitude of reasons that things happen, good things happen, bad things happen to good people. And sometimes bad things happen to, or good things happen to bad people. But, it's that statement too, it's almost challenging your faith, like, trying to get you to turn. And it's like, yeah, no, I'm going to ask him when I get there why they, now for me, in my personal situation, I know why, because my daughter Grace wouldn't be here. And that scares me just as much. I'll have 3 kids in heaven. So no, I don't feel, yeah, God to me, long term, I'm going to have a blessings. Some of the other bad things that happen, yeah, no, I'll ask him when I get there. So what was up with that? Like,
Right.
and that's okay. God understands that, but no, he's not a horrible God for he's not a genie in a bottle that makes sure your path is gold covered all the time.
Right. You, based on the reality that we're about a half a generation apart age-wise, um, and your situation was several years ago, and Grace now is your daughter
Yeah.
that you and your husband had because you lost a child.
Yeah.
You probably had people say something like this. We didn't, because we were older and Whitney was older, and that is,
Hmm.
hey, you can still have another child. Don't worry about the one that you lost. You could still have another child. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, I
Honestly, I
can go
think
out and buy
I
a new
was
pair of
saying that.
socks. Oh, I spilled my soda.
Yes,
Oh, I
right, right, because because they're replaceable.
yeah.
Go
And
ahead.
it's like, no, this was
Hmm.
still a viable living
Yeah.
human being, even if they
Yeah.
were 1 or 2 days old, or if she was 28 years
You
old.
know, and you anticipate it, and she had a dresser full of clothes, and I mean, she was anticipated. I had bonded with her, I had named her already, Mary Rose. I mean, yeah, absolutely. You have the expectation, and then to sit there and to not, I remember going out shortly after I had her, I would force myself to go out to public places because I had to, I was starting to develop anxiety, social anxiety, and that normally wasn't me like that. And, I'd go out and I would see somebody with a baby and I'd have to go home because it was just, so hard. But, yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's now having Grace was healing. Yes. And I am glad she's in my life. And it actually freaks me out to think of how close she was 5 days to never existing in my life. And that to me is like, whoa, that would have been a tragedy as well to me. But yeah, people do say stuff like that, and it's like, okay, yeah, don't say that.
Right. And I know we're probably short on time here.
Yes.
And we've kind of hit on the things, and I've got just a laundry list of others of
Mhm.
what not to say, what not to do. But let me share with you and get your thoughts on some of these things, um, of what we can say.
Mhm.
The simplest is say nothing,
Yep.
other than I'm sorry, and give them a hug. But
Mhm.
you can go on. And again, I'm sorry for your loss.
Mhm.
I wish I had the right words. I don't. Just know that I care. Um,
Yes.
I don't know how you feel. Tell me what you need, and
Mhm.
stand there and let them do something. You know, uh, my favorite memory of your lost loved one is this. And so for you, you didn't have that. For Whitney, the stories. Oh, from high
Yes.
school and adulthood and college, and the stories that people were sharing, is you can, think about this on the way to a funeral. And that is, I want to say to those who lost an adult child, you know what? I really loved your daughter, and my favorite memory is this. And all of
And you
us,
know what? And to add on to that real quick, and do it. Don't you do it when right after it happens, but call you up every couple of months and say, hey, I'm still thinking of her. I think one of the hardest thing for people sometimes too is the worry that their child will be forgotten, or the worry that their loved ones will be forgotten.
absolutely. On that, and I'm going to hit you with another story that just came to me this week. Um, we have been very blessed. The McClure family, Whitney, and the legacy she left. Soon after her passing, we had people coming to us asking what they could do for longevity. And
Hmm.
so at this point, we have 7 college scholarships that are in her name.
Oh, wow.
4 of them are at 4 different high schools, because of the work we do in education with
Hmm.
those high schools and many of those kids. One at the university she attended. She went to Whitworth University in Spokane, Washington. And then we have somebody that sponsors 2 more through our nonprofit organization. They fund it
Oh,
every
wow.
year.
Hmm.
And so there is that remembrance.
Hmm.
And there has been an athletic award that was named after her for a university that I do a lot of work for, on a women's basketball team. And so we know she's being remembered. And we're
Yes.
working on ways to make sure those scholarships are funded
Hmm.
long after we leave. But
Sure.
something you just said hit me, and that is, my dad passed away about 4 years ago. And he, in his early 80s. And one of his colleagues has, for the last few years, called me on my dad's birthday.
Oh, wow.
Somebody you expect to pass away because they're in their 80s.
Yes.
This gentleman is about 70 now, and I've known him for a long time, and
Hmm.
calls me just to say, hey, thinking about your dad, thinking about your family. I
Yes.
just wanted to let you know that I remember your dad being very gracious to me through, and he, shares examples and
Hmm.
details.
So
And
remember to remember.
yes, and
Hmm.
so, Whitney's birthday is June 28th, and she passed away on August 20th. And we have people that recognize that
Hmm.
for us. And so that's something we can all do. Make a notation, keep it on your phone, put it
Yes.
in your day plan or whatever it is that you keep track of special dates for when those things happen. My wife is
Hmm.
great about posting on Facebook on her parents' birthdays. They didn't Facebook.
Yeah.
Technology was not my mother-in-law's wheelhouse. And so we can remember to remember. And so she posts pictures and stories and details. And even though her mom's been gone for years, you
Hmm.
see these people that showed up when they were in high school at their house, and how Carrie's mom treated them and how they felt. And wow, it's hard to believe another year is
Yes.
gone and she's gone.
Yep.
So
Yes. I mean, people, yeah, those are just some things that we can do. And I thought it was important to, broach the subject because there's a lot of people out there suffering right now. And there's a lot of people that want to help, but they don't know how. And there's some people that are trying to help and they're not. So it's like we need to make sure we, address that the right way. So I thank you for coming on. And when your book does come out, we'll make sure and let people know and maybe, circle back to the subject back then. So thanks for coming on, Andy. And thanks for coming on Signed, Sealed, and Delivered. If you like the show, feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel and find me on Facebook. Thank you, Andy. Andy
thank you.
McClure. Thank you. Bye.